Hello, so in this lesson we're going to look at how we convert between our different metric units as well as between litres. So before we start looking at the different units and how we convert between them, we're going to quickly look at the different prefixes that we can use. So these prefixes are just the words that go in front of our unit. So let's say we had meters, we could put kilo in front of it and that would use this little symbol K, and it means that we have 1,000 of our unit, which is meters. If we had milliliters, we've taken the prefix milli, which means 1/1000th or 0.001 of our unit, which is liters. So these are some basic conversions that you would have seen. You might rewrite this as something like 1 meter equals 100 centimeters, and 1 meter equals 1,000 millimeters. Yep. But you would see things like this all the time. And also down here, 1 liter is 1,000 milliliters. So here we have those measurements, and from that we can get these numbers. If you don't remember anything else from this lesson, I would strongly recommend that you memorize these conversions. The 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters, a meter is 100 centimeters, and 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. With using those, you can work out everything else that we're going to talk about. So you would have seen things like this in class, where we can see what we do to convert between our different measurements or units of measurement. The way that we do this is we look at how many of something is in another one. So if we're converting from milliliters to centimeters, we think how many milliliters are in a centimeter? We have 10. So to go from our milliliters to centimeters, we're going to have a 10 there. So both ways we're going to have a 10. How many centimeters are in a meter? We have 100. So we go 100, then we go 100. And how many meters in a kilometer is 1,000. Now we also need to think about where the times and divide signs go. One way to think of it is if we're going from a smaller unit to a bigger unit, we're going to have less things. 10 milliliters becomes 1 centimeter, so we divide our 10 by 10 to get 1. So this side has our divides, and this side here has our times. So now we're going to look at two-dimensional units, or square units. So we know that these are our basic measurements of length, and these are the numbers that I've asked you to memorize. If we take this square here, we have a centimeter by a centimeter, so this equals 1 square centimeter, this whole area. If we're then converting that into milliliters, for example, we need to be careful. It doesn't become this conversion here, because this time we're looking at a squared. So 1 square centimeter doesn't equal 10 square millimeters. Because if you look here, 1 centimeter here equals to 10 millimeters, and again, the same there. And so if you count up all of these squares here, we're going to get 100. So we're going to get 100 square millimeters. And that's a bit of an explanation of how we get there. We take our 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters, which gives us 100 square millimeters. Another way to think of it is we go our 10 millimeters and we're going to square that, which gives us 100 square millimeters. So here we have an example of a question that we might get asked. We're being asked to convert between square millimeters and meters. And before we worry about the square, we're just going to ask how many millimeters are in 1 meter. Are in 1 meter. We can look over here. A meter equals 100 centimeters. 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. So we just need to multiply these numbers together and we're going to get 1,000. So we know that 1 meter is 1,000 millimeters. Now to work out how many square millimeters are in a square meter, you can think of this square here. 1 meter, which is the same as 1,000 millimeters. 1 meter, which is the same as 1,000 millimeters again. So this here's a square meter, but it's also 1,000 times 1,000 millimeters. So it's 1 square meter equals 1,000 millimeters by 1,000 millimeters. Or you could write this as square meter equals 1,000 millimeters squared. You could even square this in brackets. So we're going to get 1 square meter equals 1 million square millimeters. So all we have done here is we've first step worked out the conversion between these numbers without the squares in front of them. Then we've got a square, so we're going to square both of these numbers. We end up with 1 square meter equals 1 million square millimeters. Okay, now it's your turn. See if you can work out how many square centimeters are in a square kilometer. Okay, so like last time, we're going to work out, if we have 1 kilometer, how many centimeters do we have? We go over here. A kilometer is 1,000 meters. 1 meter is 100 centimeters. So we just multiply these two numbers together. We're going to get a number with 5 zeros at the end. So 1 kilometer equals 100,000 centimeters. Now I've been asked to find these in square units. So we're going to go, we have our same numbers as before. We're going to square both of these numbers. So we get 1 kilometer, 1 square kilometer this time. And now this is the same as going 100,000 centimeters times 100,000 centimeters. Now we just count the amount of zeros. There's going to be 10. Let's go 1, 2, 2, 3. So we have this number there is how many square meters we have. All right, your turn again. See how many square millimeters are in a square kilometer. Okay, so as before, how many millimeters are in 1 kilometer? This time we're going through all of them to get to millimeters, so we're going to go 1,000 times 100 times 10. So we're going to have a number with 6 zeros at the end, so we're going to have a million. So 1 kilometer equals 1 million millimeters. So we've already got a pretty big number, so we know it's going to get very big by the end. So the next step, as before, is we're going to square both of these numbers. So we're going to get 1 square kilometer equals this number squared. So we get a million millimeters squared. So we're going to end up with this number here. So it's a 1 followed by 12 zeros. Oh. And that's square millimeters. So again, here's our conversion table. We're going to work out what numbers we multiply and divide by to move between each unit of measurement. So we'll start by going from millimeters to centimeters. So we go 1 centimeter. We know it equals to 10 millimeters. But this time they're squared, so we're going to square that one. We get 1 square centimeter is 100 square millimeters. So we're going to put 100 as the number here and here. Now, if you think which one is divided and which one's times, we're going to think that if we had 100 millimeters, we're then going to have to do something to get to 1 centimeter. So if you follow this arrow, we're going to divide our 100 by 100 to get 1. Which means over here we're going to multiply. Okay, so these are our first two numbers. Next we're going from centimeters to meters. So 1 meter is 100 centimeters. Again, we're going to square them. Let's get 1 square meter is 10,000 square centimeters. So we're going to times by 10,000. On each of those. Finally, we have our square kilometers and meters. So 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. Square that. We're going to get 1 square kilometer equals 1,000,000 square meters. So divide by 1,000,000 and times 1,000,000. So hopefully that helps you understand why we use this conversion table or how we get those numbers there. As we've seen in the previous questions, it's often much faster just to go without drawing up this table. Now we're finally going to get to 3 dimensions. Here we have a cubic centimeter. We have a centimeter times a centimeter times a centimeter. So this whole thing here is 1 cubic centimeter. And I'll just put that there so that we can look back at it later. And we need to remember that if we have 1 centimeter, that's going to equal 10 millimeters. So in this case, we have 10 millimeters across here by 10 millimeters across here and 10 across here. So we're going to have 10 by 10 by 10. So we're going to have 1,000 millimeters. So if we were to look at our previous way of working it out, we know that conversion of centimeters is 10 millimeters. We can, this time we're doing cube or 3 dimensions. So we're going to go 1 centimeter equals 10 by 10 by 10 or 1,000 cubic millimeters. Okay, we've been asked to find how many cubic millimeters are in a cubic meter. So we have our meter to millimeter. We need to work out first how many millimeters are in a meter. And we go 100 times 10, we're going to get 1,000. Now this time, instead of squaring, we're finding cubic measurements. So we're going to cube these numbers. So you get 1 cubic meter equals 1,000 millimeters by 1,000 millimeters by 1,000 millimeters. Or 1 cubic meter equals 1 followed by 9 zeros. Cubic millimeters. So as you can see, when you get to cubic, it becomes even more dramatic, the size of the numbers. All right, can you work out how many cubic centimeters there are in 1 cubic kilometer? Okay, so again, we're going to work out how many centimeters are in a kilometer. So 1 kilometer equals 100 meters, which equals each 100 centimeters. So we're going to multiply these 2 numbers. We're going to get a number with 5 zeros. So we end up with 1 kilometer equals 100,000 centimeters. Now again, we're cubing. So we're going to go 3. We get 1 cubic kilometer equals 100,000 times 100,000 times 100,000. Or we're going to get 15 zeros. So we get that number of cubic centimeters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of 3. Okay, and this one's very big. Can you find out how many cubic millimeters are in 1 cubic kilometer? Okay, so we're moving here from 1 kilometer into millimeters. So your 1 kilometer equals 100 meters times 100 centimeters times 10 millimeters. Or we're going to get to 1 million, or 6 zeros at the end, millimeters. Again, we're cubing it. This time we're going to get 18 zeros at the end. So 1 cubic kilometer is the number Okay, so there's our number of cubic millimeters. Now, quickly, when you see in your calculator, if you were to work this out in your calculator, you would have gotten 1 times 10 to the power of 18. There may have also been an e in there, depending on which calculator you're using. What this means is we're taking 10 to the power of 18, which is just going to be a number with 1 followed by 18 zeros. So your calculator may have come to this, in which case you would be correct, but hopefully you've been looking at these sort of numbers here. If your calculator were to do something like 1 times 10 to the minus 18, it's going to be 0.00, and we go 18 times till we get our 1. So if it's positive, it's going to be a really big number. If it's a negative, it's going to be less than the 0. That's not really important for this, just explaining what it is if it does happen on your calculator. Alright, and now we're finally going to fill out the conversion table. So, from millimeters to centimeters, 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. Cubing, 1 cubic centimeter is 10 by 10 by 10 millimeters, or 1,000 cubic millimeters. So again, we divide by 1,000. We times by 1,000. Next is from meters and centimeters. 1 meter is 100 centimeters. We cube that. We cube that. We get 1 cubic meter is 1,000,000 cubic centimeters. So we times by 1,000,000, or we divide by 1,000,000. And finally, from kilometers to meters. Sorry, my pen broke for a second. We're going to go 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters. Sorry, we don't have a cube there yet. Now we cube them. We get 1 cubic kilometer equals 1 followed by 9 zeros, or 1,000 times 1,000. So we're going to be timesing by that number again, or dividing by it. Okay, so now we're going to quickly look at how we convert between metric units and liters. You need to remember this box. I think I said before there was a box you had to remember. This is the other box that you need to remember. This should be cubic centimeters. 1 cubic centimeter equals to 1 milliliter when we're talking about water. But for the sake of this, we'll just consider it to be true. So here we have a table, and we're going to work out the conversion between meters and liters. So we have our number here is 1,000. Here is 1,000,000. And here was 1,000,000,000. So this is from our conversion table. Okay, and if we're going down, we're going to be dividing. If we're going up, we're going to be multiplying. So here we have, to work out how many liters we're going to have to convert each of our units, our meter units, into centimeters. So we'll start with the meters one. That's the easiest one to start with. 1 cubic meter equals 1,000,000 cubic centimeters. So that means it's going to equal 1,000,000 1,000,000 milliliters. Now we could write that, but we then want to make that into a more sensible unit of measurement. So if we remember our prefixes from before, milliliters is going to be 0.001 liters. A kiloliter is going to be 1,000 liters. And we could rewrite this one to be a liter is 1,000 milliliters. These are good things to remember. And if you know what the prefix is, you can just work them out. Otherwise, you'll need to memorize these things. So we have 1 liter is 1,000 milliliters. So here we have, we could go 1,000 liters is the equivalent to 1 cubic meter. And then we know that 1,000 liters is 1 kiloliter. So we can go to 1. So we go to 1 kiloliter. Now we'll go to the cubic meters one. This time we know how many, this conversion here between cubic meters and liters. So we're going to use this number and that conversion. So we know that 1 cubic kilometer is 1 billion. Cubic meters, we know that means it's 1 billion kiloliters. We could take our things to the next prefix. A megaliter is going to be 1,000 kiloliters. I'm not going to go any bigger because you're not really expected to know any bigger units, but you should know up to a megaliter. So if we're converting between these two, we just divide by 1,000. So get rid of the last 3 zeros. We get 1 million megaliters. And that is a lot of water. Now, finally we have to work out this conversion here. Now, to get from 1 centimeter to a millimeter, we're going to divide by 1,000. So we're going to get 0.000 cubic centimeters. Sorry, 0.001 cubic centimeters. Now we can see that that's going to be 0.001 milliliters. So this here is how we convert between meters and liters. If it's confusing, have another look at it. Otherwise, bring your questions about it to me in class. Okay, so this question is just like the previous one, or we did this question previously, but we're going to quickly go through it again without the table and previous information. We also need to remember the 1 cubic centimeter is equivalent to 1 milliliter of water. Now, we're using this relationship here because we're going from meters to cubic centimeters and then to our liter measurements, or to milliliters and then to kiloliters. So we need to work out what the cubic conversion is. So you get 1 cubic meter is 1 billion cubic centimeters. So now in this unit we can go to milliliters. So we end up with 1 million milliliters. Now we go to our kiloliters. Remember, a liter is going to have 1,000 milliliters, just like a meter is going to have 1,000 millimeters. And a kiloliter is going to have 1,000 liters. So this is the equivalent of 1,000 liters, which is the equivalent of 1 kiloliter. So our answer there is 1 kiloliter. So hopefully that helps you understand units a bit better and how we convert between them. Please bring any questions you have to me in class.